Hi everyone, this is Christiane from Backpacking Bananas, and this is a tutorial video on how to use the Life Budget Tracker. We have two Life Budget Trackers on backpackingbananas.com, and this tutorial is specifically the UK self-assessment version. The most important difference is that this tool helps to give you an estimate of how much tax you need to set aside based on your income, expenses, and the official UK tax rates and bands for the year 2021 and 2022. If you're a little bit confused as to what this means and all of your income comes from employment, you probably don't need this spreadsheet and the other one will be better. The purpose of this spreadsheet is to allow you to build a budget for your year, plan your savings goals and how they fit in with your budget, estimate how much money to set aside for paying your taxes at the end of the year, track your actual spending throughout the year, and finally analyze how your spending is going in comparison to your budget and ensuring that you are on track. So in essence, the Life Budget Tracker helps plan and manage your finances throughout the year. It encourages you to maintain awareness of your finances and in doing so, gain proper control of them. So when you open up the Life Budget Tracker, this is what you are going to see. You're going to start here on the Inputs Budget tab. As you can see, you've got all your tabs here at the bottom: Inputs Budget, Inputs Actual, Savings, Estimated Taxes. These yellow tabs are the ones which you are going to be putting information into, because any yellow cells are the cells that you have to fill out. If there's any cells that are not yellow, don't worry, you don't have to touch these at all. They will self-populate as you put your information in. So let's go back to the first tab and get started. If at any point you are unsure about what to do on a particular tab, you can just read the summaries at the top, and you'll also find notes that we've written for you going down each page just to remind you about little things that each cell is going to be doing. So on this first tab, the Inputs Budget, we are going to be planning our budget for the year. So we're going to start at the top and work our way down. So you're going to start with your opening bank balance. So what you want to do is you want to have a look at all your bank accounts that you have. So for me personally, that's my business bank account and my personal bank account, and you are going to add up all the money that you have in here at the beginning of the month. So either your closing bank balances of the month before or your opening bank balance for the current month. What you're not going to include is any savings accounts that you already have, or any money that you've already put aside for tax or already put aside for a house deposit, because that's money that you're not supposed to be touching. So the opening bank balance is just the money that you have available to you in your bank accounts. So as an example, I'm going to say that I have £2,000 in my business bank account, £1,000 in my personal, which makes £3,000 overall. And for the starting month, you have a drop down menu and you're just going to put whatever month you are starting this budget on. So if you've purchased this budget tracker in April 2021, then that's all you need to do. Then moving down to the income. So on the left hand side here, you are going to write down all the different income streams that you may have. And now you can categorize this in whatever way you want. So you may decide to do it by employer, by client, or by revenue stream, whatever makes the most sense to you. So as an example for myself, I would put in here ad revenue from YouTube. I would put in affiliates because I make money through affiliate links, sponsorships, digital products, clothing line, and more recently I've started selling tours as well, and so I'm going to put that on there as well. What you could also put in here is if you have any dividend or investment wins, that would come under this income bracket as well. Now obviously this is planning into the future. You may know already how much you're going to be getting from each revenue stream, and that's great. That's going to make your life really, really easy because you can just input those figures. However, for me, the amount that I earn every month is always different. So I'm going to be putting in here how much I plan to earn in each of these revenue streams. And you may find that you want to write just the same thing for every month if you just have the same monthly goal for each thing, or perhaps you have certain months which you know you're going to be working harder on a certain revenue stream and they might be higher. So it's completely up to you as to how you want to play around with these numbers. So I've just been putting in very rough and quite inaccurate figures for the purpose of this tutorial, but obviously try and make this as accurate as possible for you. So the next line down, you've got your estimated taxes, and you may at this point be thinking, oh my goodness, I have no idea how much I should be setting aside for my taxes each month. And don't worry, that is where we are coming to the rescue to help you with this figure. So go along to the Inputs Estimated Taxes tab, and this is going to help you out. Now what we're going to do at the top is we're going to put in our total expected earnings for the year. Luckily, we have just filled in all of this. So going back to our budget, if I highlight all of those cells, I can see at the bottom where it says sum what all of these things add added up is. So that says 51,100. So that's the figure that I'm going to be putting in here. So putting in my total expected earnings here, it's giving me an estimate of how much I should roughly be putting aside for taxes each month. However, taxes are a little bit more complicated than this, and it takes into account things like how much you spend on your business expenses and also your student loan repayments. So that's something that you want to put in as well. So for example, if you work from home, then a certain portion of your rent will be able to be claimed as a business expense. So let's say that I am able to claim £100 of my rent to go as a business expense. We'll put that in here. And then the same goes for your bills. For further information on what you can and can't claim as a business expense, I recommend you visit the HMRC website. Again, really don't worry too much if you do not know exactly, because this is really just creating an estimated amount. And as you can see here, you do actually have a few more lines if there's any business expenses that apply to you that we haven't listed. So other business expense, and you can add those in as well. And you'll notice as you're putting all of these figures in that it is affecting your estimated total tax and repayments at the top, but we haven't finished just yet. If you scroll down, you just have to fill in the student loan repayments, follow the instructions. Me personally, I do not have any student loan. I did not go to university, feeling very smug about that right now. And once you've filled out this whole page, go back to the top, and this orange figure is the really important one for you here to take back to that initial budget page. So what it's telling me based on my figures is that I should realistically be setting aside £951.71, to be very specific, aside for my taxes to pay at the end of the year. What it's also telling me here is what that is as a percentage of my profit. So I actually have a couple of options. Either I can put 951.74 straight into my estimated taxes line, or if you're someone like me who fluctuates quite a lot with what they earn month to month, you may decide to use the percentage of profit instead to work this out. So for me here, that's 25%. So what I can do is I can scroll down on my month here. How much do I earn that month? 3,500 equals 3,500, and then I want to times that by 25%, so 0.25. And I can use that figure there for each month. Something to bear in mind that if you are working out this way is that your estimated taxes probably will come up a little bit higher because we're not taking into account your expenses, but that is never a bad thing to put away too much money at the end of the year, because it's like a little bonus for you if you don't have to pay it. If you feel like you do not need our help with the estimated taxes and you would prefer to do it yourself, you may prefer to use the original Life Budget Tracker, which does not include the estimated taxes feature, but it does still have the estimated taxes line, so you can put it in yourself. So after you filled out your estimated taxes line, we can move down into your expenses. Now what you're going to be writing in here is literally everything that you plan to spend over the next year. Now as you can see, there's quite a few categories here. You do not have to fill every single one of them out, just whichever ones apply to you. Now I think the best way to fill this out is to work through it row by row as opposed to column by column. So let's say I'm paying £600 in rent at the moment, but in November perhaps I know I'm going to move to somewhere that's more expensive. I'll start putting that in as well. If you unexpectedly in the year notice that there's going to be a massive change in your income, feel free to change this budget tab at whatever time that you like. You can play around with the figures all throughout the year, and you can also do that with the estimated taxes. You can play around with this number here and see how it affects the percentage of profit, and obviously you can adjust that for each particular month. Remember, this is a cash flow budget, so you don't need to fill something out every single month. Let's say you only have to pay your vehicle insurance every single year. You can just do a lump sum on one of the months, because obviously that is more realistic of when that money would be leaving your bank account. Now coming on to memberships and subscriptions, we've given you prompts here on the left hand sides of what all of these could possibly mean. An easy way of setting your budget for these is have a look at your bank statement at what you've already been paying for your monthly subscriptions, and that should help you out budget for the year. So once you've filled out everything on that page, it should look a little bit like this. Now what you'll start to see at the bottom is how this affects your closing bank balance. So all of mine are green, which is fantastic. That means that I'm not going to be out of pocket at any month. And actually I've still got quite a lot of money left in the bank, but what I have not accounted for just yet, which is what we're going to do next, is our savings. So in order to fill in this savings row here, we're going to go into our inputs savings tab at the bottom. Now this is probably my favorite tab on the Life Budget Tracker to play around with, because I'm able to see how much I think I can realistically save for my different goals. So my personal goals, I've got my house deposit, we've got a trip that I'm doing in August, the 3 Peaks Challenge, which is going to cost a fair amount of money. Now, in the amount required, you're not going to put what you already have saved for these things. This is what you still have to save. So in an ideal world, personally, I want to have saved at least £30,000 for my house deposit, if not more, but this is a good starting point. And the 3 Peaks Challenge that I'm going to be doing in August over 3 days is not that expensive, but it is going to be costing me about 350 quid, which I'd rather not just immediately come out of my bank account. I'd quite like to save up a bit of money for that. And for the purpose of this spreadsheet, let's say that I'm saving up to buy a car as well, which is going to cost me £5,000. So what you're then going to input here is your starting month. When do you want to start saving? I mean, I would say for all of these, I want to start saving as soon as I can. But if you know that that's not possible to start saving right now, you can adjust this starting month to whenever you want throughout the year. And then you're also going to put in your purchase month. So this is actually a 5-year drop down menu. So I would, in an ideal world, like to buy my house by April 2022. Don't know if that's too ambitious, but that is what this spreadsheet is for. The 3 Peaks Challenge is in August. And let's say I have lots and lots of time to buy a car. I don't want to buy it until November 2022. The purchase month is the month that you actually want to make your purchase. As you can see, I want to spend my 3 Peaks money in August, so my saving finishes in July. And what you'll see that this has done is it's auto-populated our little table underneath, and we are now able to see how much this would mean that we have to put aside each month in order to reach our savings goals, which is really, really nice to see. And if we go back to our budget tab, that total has been inputted for us. I can now see that I have some red cells. The red signifies how much in debt I would be. And obviously I don't want to be in any debt at all, which means that I cannot afford my budget with the income that I plan to earn. So I've got to make some changes to make sure I'm not in this terrible debt situation. So either my savings are unrealistic here or my spending's unrealistic. So going back to my savings. So let's say I can't afford a car by November 2022. I'm going to give myself until July 2024 to be able to afford that, which is going to take down that monthly amount. Now with the house deposit, I still want to have purchased that by April 2022. So perhaps it means that this amount required is not realistic for me. And so I'm going to have to bring that down and say, actually, I can only afford to save £20,000. Obviously, that means that I'm going to have to be looking at some different houses. And the 3 Peaks Challenge, well, I can't change too much about that. So let's go back to our inputs budget and woohoo, we're suddenly all in the green. But you can play around with these saving tabs and different numbers to see how it affects your budget. Now, by saving £25,000 for the house deposit, it's actually not too bad here. And maybe I can look at my spending and look at other ways in which I can reduce it. Maybe I can say, you know what? I don't need to spend £100 on fashion every month. I'm only going to spend £50 on fashion per month, and just see how that affects your figures at the bottom. You can very clearly see if you're about to put yourself in debt, which is obviously something that we very much want to avoid. Or perhaps you can come back up to your essentials. Do I really need to be spending this much money on my mortgage and rent? Can I move into a smaller apartment, which is going to cost me a lot less? What's important to remember is that we are treating this savings row as spending, because ideally this is money that we want to be putting away in a separate account, which is why it's coming out of our bank balance, and it's money that we're not going to touch and we're going to have available for when we want to make our big purchase. And when we finish filling this out and we've played around with it, we're quite happy with how it looks, we can have a look at our summary of our monthly budget, and this just gives us a really nice overview of how much we've budgeted for our income, how much we've budgeted for our tax and expenses and savings, and of course again we have the green and reds at the bottom to see how it affects our closing bank balance. Obviously I'm still going to have to make a few changes with mine to make sure that that is all green. So now moving on to the second tab, which is the inputs actual. Now this tab you probably think looks quite similar to the previous one. However, this is what you're going to be putting in what you actually earned and what you actually spent. So I recommend filling out this tab at the end of each month by looking at your bank statements and looking at the actual exact figures of the income and outcome of your bank statements and tracking it all down here. So the name of your income streams are likely to be exactly the same as what you've put on the budget tab. But the reason you're filling this out again is in case you pick up any new income streams that you hadn't planned for as the year goes on. And as opposed to row by row, you will obviously be filling this out column by column. With the estimated taxes, obviously you're not actually paying your tax every month. However, this is the amount of money that you have actually put aside for your taxes. So on our budgets page, we can see that we've recommended ourselves to put away £875 that month. However, for whatever circumstances, you may not actually put away that figure. So this is the figure that you have physically set aside that tax money for. You've put it in a different savings base or a different bank account. This is money that you can no longer touch because this is money that you are setting aside for your taxes at the end of the year. So let's say I physically transferred £800 into a separate bank account for my taxes that month. And then your spending costs are pretty self-explanatory. You're literally just looking at your bank accounts at how much you spent on these things. A quick tip for adding up numbers within a cell. Let's say that in April you had a few different transactions in terms of how much you spent on petrol and parking. If you type in equals and then the number, so let's say I spent £20 on petrol and then plus, and then the next week I spent £15 on petrol, and then the next week I spent £3 on parking, and then if you just press enter, then it's done the maths for you and it's added up all of those figures. And you may find that a lot with public transport as well, especially if you're getting it every day. And the same with groceries. Let's say one grocery shop was £20, but then the next one was £100 and the next one was £40. And with the savings row, it's similar to that of the estimated taxes in that obviously we have helped you come up with a rough budget of how much you should be saving that month. However, whether you actually did or not is another story. So what we're going to be putting in here is how much you actually put in a separate savings account. It's not in your normal account anymore. It's set aside. You can't touch it for now. And this is that actual figure of the money that you moved. And then finally on this page, we are going to be putting your closing bank balance. So you can find this figure on your bank statements. And like I said before, you want to be adding up all the bank accounts that you use. So for example, your business bank account and your current bank account, but not the accounts that you've set aside for your tax or your savings. This is the money that you have left available for spending on your bank accounts at the end of the month. If you find it easier, you can check your bank balance right at the end of the month. Otherwise, at any other point after the end of the month, you can view your bank statements and find the correct balance for the specific date. And so after you've filled out your actuals for the month, we can have a look at our monthly actual summary page, which will give you a really nice summary of all the figures that you've put in for that month. So you've got your opening balance, which you already input in on the budget page. That's however much money you started with at the beginning of April 2021. Another way of finding this figure is having a look at your bank statements at what your closing bank balance was for March 2021. And then it's put in here your income, how much you put away for tax that month, how much you spent, how much you put away for savings. Now you then would have put in your closing bank balance, and if the spreadsheet has noticed that your closing bank balance doesn't quite align up with the income and the spending that you've put, you'll have a little unidentified figure here. Don't worry too much about it. It just means that there are some items that appear on your bank statements that you haven't included on the inputs actuals tab. So if you did want to try and rectify that and make that unidentified go back to zero, then have a recheck through all your bank statements and make sure you have recorded every single one of your transactions in the inputs actuals tab. So as you keep filling these out column by column, month by month, you can keep checking in on your summary tabs to see how you are doing. So at the end of the year, when we finished filling all of this out, we can go to our annual summary, the very satisfying page, and we can have a look at basically how we did that year in comparison to our budget. So obviously with the opening bank balance, we don't have any difference between our budget and actual. That's just what we started the year with. And then moving down to our total income, I can see that I planned to earn £51,100 this year. I actually earned £60,670, which means that was £9,570 more than expected. It's green, which is what we want. As for the tax and repayments line, you can have a look at this total here on the actuals, and you should see that the money that you have actually set aside for your tax and repayments should as a total match up with this, unless you already had money in that bank account. And the same same with your savings. This total should match up with the money that you have actually set aside in your savings now, unless you already had money in that account. As for the expenses, I can see that I spent a little bit more than what I was expecting. I spent £458 more than I was expecting. And then overall throughout the year, I just had £93 of unidentified expenses, which means that there were some items in my bank statements which I didn't quite manage to get down into this spreadsheet, which is why that figure is coming up. But overall, in my closing bank balance, we are in the green. That is absolutely fantastic. Even though I spent more than I was expecting, I actually earned a lot more than I was expecting, which means that I'm still in the green. I planned to have £317 in the bank account at the end of the year. I actually had 10,700, which is 10,383 more than expecting. And obviously I can do whatever I want with that money. I can spend it on whatever I want and see it as a bonus, or if I was going to be really financially smart, I'd probably put that straight into even more savings. And then on the right hand side here, we have our spending breakdown of the entire year. This is a lovely little pie chart, just giving us an overall view of where you've been putting your money throughout the year. So I can see that the majority of my money went into my savings, which is good. That's really what I want. I spent a good chunk of it on tax, which is inevitable. I spent a good chunk of it on essentials, which is, well, essential. And then a smaller amount on spending money and memberships, which is probably a good thing as well. But it's really nice to look back at this annual summary at the end of the year to analyze how you did, see areas in which you think you did well, areas in which you think you can improve, and hopefully off this information you can see how you can create a more effective budget for yourself next year. If you would like some little tips along the way as you're filling in your life budget tracker, you can click on our banana budgeting tips at the bottom here, which will just help you with a little bit of guidance in ways that you can reduce your spending if you think that you're spending too much, and how you can save more and basically just be smarter with your money. I really hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoy using the life budget tracker. Both the original version and the UK self-assessment version are on sale now on backpackingbananas.com.